Notice I'm not super picky about the word order or grammar. As long as they can understand me, I can understand them. I feel like often it just kind of goes by convenience since we've got a pretty large board set up. Yes, Kibble Puzzle Mousy. And he is happily knocking it around in his box up here. It's, in case anybody wants, hopefully nobody gets motion sick here. But a little bird's eye view of Bernie enjoying his cable puzzle. That was awesome. He's been experimenting with his more and all done buttons lately. And just today, he pressed all done to request that his collar go away now that we're practicing trying to wear a collar more frequently, not just when we're going on our outside adventures. He's not sure how he feels about that. So he pressed all done, started scratching at his neck, trying to do the little lick and get to it. And so I told him, all done, verbally, pressed the button, and then took the collar off of him. So you can, utilize modeling, showing them examples of things, demonstrating lots of different ways. Awesome. That was a little teachable moment and demo there. Thank you all for being patient. Let me reshare my screen, see what intros have come through here. Oh, this is a great group tonight. Welcome, Gentry, and 3-month-old Shih Tzu Roman, or 3-year-old, excuse me. Just got the tester kit. So far, only pressed the button. I'm working with him. Okay, that's understandable. You're only a few days in, sounds like. So that's great that you're getting any button presses at all. The first 2 buttons are treat and play. Fantastic. Great choices. Ren, welcome to you and your 2 cats, 2.5, 3 years old. Marlo, Oriental Shorthair, and Fletcher, Devon Rex. Oh, so fun. No progress so far. Let me know, Ren, how long you've been at it, out of curiosity. And Audrey, welcome to you, and Louise, 2-year-old Australian Shepherd Heeler mix. Love it. I have a Border Collie and my mini American Shepherd. Inside, yes, we're inside now. Storm sound outside. My other cat pressing inside. Had buttons for a while, but learning is a struggle for us. Okay, we'll talk about maybe some motivation, some different button choices, things like that to help troubleshoot. Great info, thank you. Addie, welcome to you and Lua, 7, and Genesis 6, both lab mixes, both confused with the buttons. Okay, we'll see if we can clear up some confusion. And Grace, welcome to you and Cinnabon. Picked her up out of a bush, so I'm not sure on breed. I hear you. I have a tuxedo and a void cat, and that's about all I know. She's 4 years old. Got her to use 1 button outside consistently now for a week. Fantastic. And great to have you, Calvin. And we have Robin as well. So we have Calvin, our guide coordinator, and we have Robin, one of our guides, who has had lots of success with her dog and cat, Bert and Ernie, and is one of our mentor guides and leads mentorship calls, which we'll talk about in our continuing education here in just a bit. Irma, great to have you. And Irma will be all over the chat and sharing great resources for you all throughout too. Okay, and Ren says set up in March. Good to know. Haven't been consistent. Just scritches so far. We often recommend 2 to 3 buttons. We'll get into all that nitty gritty in just a moment. So sounds like maybe adding some additional options could help jumpstart the progress that you want to see. All right, and so on our agenda tonight, if anybody is here and hasn't had a chance to introduce themselves yet and would like to, feel free to do so in the chat. I'll see when it comes through. My name is Morgan Krug. I'm a certified dog behavior consultant. I've been working professionally with animals for almost 18 years now. And while I'm best known for teaching my blind cat Jasper to use the buttons, who's pictured here, I've had multiple successful herding dog learners, other learners around me, and now I've got a pair of 1-year-old cats, mostly blind cat Katie and one-eyed cat Bernie. And it was, they both already used the buttons a little bit while we're talking this evening. And so on the agenda are our introductions, which we're doing now. Then we'll chat through the keys to button teaching, modeling, first words, and target training. This is an interactive discussion, so feel free to ask questions throughout. In the chat's a little bit easier for me to keep track of your questions, make sure that I cover everything, and we can talk about it during the most relevant portion. Then I'll share additional resources, and if you have any more questions, we've got time for Q&A after as well. So thank you. And a quick note as well, when we're going through today and discussing, these are general best practices that we've developed over the last almost 5 years now with the researchers, with community experiences. But just because they're overall best practices for most doesn't mean that it's the best practice for you, for your learner, for your household. You know them best. So if at any point I'm saying something and you're like, that doesn't sound right to us, or, well, we did something different and it worked, great. I'm not here to tell you you're doing anything wrong. I'm just here to help figure out the nuance of what's going to be right for you all. And it's not rocket science by any means. It should be fun, engaging, and we're still learning so much about all of this. So anyway, that's my spiel. And Charlie and Melinda, welcome to you two with your 2 doodles and a poodle. I love it. All right. So a bit more about us as a company. While Alexander Rossi and Christina Hunger were using buttons previously with their learners, FluentPet is the original button teaching system. So what does this mean that we are a system? So it means that our mission is to figure out how to teach dogs, cats, and the other animals we share this planet with how to talk, or an approximation of it. And we believe that pulling this off will take a village, a community that can develop and share button teaching tips and tricks and work together to discover the most successful button teaching approaches. So that is where you all come in. Our success in this mission entirely depends on your success with your learners. And the more of us who are able to progress, the faster we can figure out just how far all this can go and expand what those best practices might be, or grow, evolve, all of those things. We're constantly learning and reevaluating. And for anybody wondering how far can all this go, we think this video really helps paint a picture of what's possible. You'll probably recognize Alexis and Bunny.
The foundation for getting started with buttons is just a desire to connect. I can't remember the exact order, but I think she pressed stranger mad, and I was like, what does that mean? And then ouch paw. And she came over to me and she put her left paw in my hand, and I was like, okay. And I looked between her toes and she had a foxtail stuck between her toes.
This was the stranger in her paw. She's got a mat between her toes.
That was great. With Jasper, and it's not just Bunny who can do all these amazing things. Jasper was able to request medication multiple times after having an eye procedure. She was able to press eyes and help in order to request it a little bit ahead of time, or to remind me if I had missed a dose of her medication. So that just blew me away. And I was already convinced that buttons would be potentially life-changing for us, but now I've seen it firsthand. And it's not all medical related. There's tons of fun examples too, lower stakes things as well. And I see Robin typing. She's got an amazing example as well. But in the fun examples, an early one was with Scout, a Catahoula mix, who used to press water and bone a ton. Took us a little while to figure out what she wanted, but it was ice cubes. And so she got an ice cube button and was able to advocate for herself that way. So it really is amazing how creative they can be, even with a limited vocabulary, and just giving them that agency, that control to request whatever it is that's interesting to them. And so how do we begin? For those of you who are just getting started with your buttons, you can be practicing doing this verbally. If anybody's still waiting on a shipment, same thing. Talk to your learners all the time and try to be as consistent as you can. None of us are robots, though. Nobody's perfect. So just do your best. And if you've got multiple humans in your household, try to pick words, concepts, the language that is easiest for everybody to keep track of, to be on the same page about. If one person calls going outside to the bathroom, they're taking the dog out to the bathroom potty, but the other person says, hurry up, that might not be a great starting button, right? But since modeling is how we teach our learners what the concepts mean, you're showing them what they mean. You're following through, ideally saying yes to their presses. As long as the outcome is consistent, they can learn it. So don't stress if you've got an untrainer in your house or anything like that, but try to get everybody on the same page if you can. And so again, you want to build their excitement, their enthusiasm around the board, teach them that this is an amazing tool that they now have available to them. And so think about things that's easy for you to say yes to and easy to follow the simple steps to modeling. The first one is just pressing the button. And the faster you can immediately follow through, the more frequently you can follow through, the better to help them make those connections. And then step 3 is just follow through, show them the meaning of the word by making it happen. And step 3 is repeat. It's a lot of repetition, especially early on, while we're helping them understand that the buttons have a consistent meaning each and every time and a consistent outcome as well. And I do have a note at the bottom of this slide real quick, and then we'll dive into our second video. The speed at which they pick up pressing has no bearing on their long-term success. Some of our most advanced learners these days, I'm talking 100 plus buttons. Robin has a learner with an example of this as well. Some of them take weeks or months before they press. That's okay. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It doesn't mean that they're less intelligent. Sometimes it just takes time for them to get it, to be motivated enough to use the board. And we'll talk about choosing words to help and target training as well on our next few slides. But for now, let's keep diving into modeling. What does this actually look like day to day? Some of you all saw my example with Bernie pressing more and then going right to his puzzle. He has a puzzle button. He has pressed his puzzle button, but he didn't that time. He told me with his body language what he wanted more of. I think that's wonderful. I was able to understand him. He didn't get frustrated. He communicated very effectively and clearly. It was a full sentence. So I'm able to go over and press the button, but I'm not asking him to. That can be really frustrating for them, right? So whenever you can, honoring that body language, following through and thinking about, can I be verbalizing it or can I press a button equivalent if it's appropriate? Here's what it looks like when you're brand new. This is Kelly and Delmer in the video I'm about to play. This is the first 24 hours that they had buttons down in their household. Know that she's talking to him throughout and she's following through. The video would just be too long. I want you to get an idea of the frequency that she's pressing. And she's home throughout the day. So this is, perhaps more frequent than if you work outside of the home. But whenever you're around, spending time near the board or picking a spot where you can spend time around the board conveniently and just model as much as you can.
Puzzle. Outside. 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 Puzzle. Outside. Pet. Puzzle. Outside. Outside. Pet. Puzzle. Puzzle.
Yes. Puzzle. More puzzle?
Puzzle.
Relax it
Puzzle.
right there.
Outside. 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 Puzzle. Outside. Puzzle. Outside. Outside. Outside.
So again, it's a lot of repetition. We want to get that frequency in. So thinking about buttons that you can repeat 10 to 15 times throughout the day, or just throughout, a 5-minute session at the board, if that's all you have the capacity for, or if that's all that you're around, no big deal. You can do a lot in a short amount of time. So here's an example of what that kind of rapid modeling would look like here. So here's our food modeling challenge with Kelly and a different learner, Nushka. So in this case, Kelly's pressing a snack button. She's using an actual treat and then throwing it a little bit away so that Nushka's then re-engaging. So looking away and then re-engaging with Kelly with the button, getting to see, oh, it's that button being pressed. It's hearing the sound. If they have auditory, if they can hear, they're getting all of this input, able to make these connections. And so it can be as quick as just rapid modeling, taking 30, 60 seconds, taking some of their kibble, a few treats. I've even broken kibble in half to do that. So thinking about what's easy for you to model rapidly at the board, something fun, engaging, motivating to your learners. And so when we're looking at our choosing first buttons and words slide, just to reiterate what I was just chatting about here, we want to be setting ourselves up for success. It can be frustrating for us and them if the buttons that are down are things that, you're not able to say yes to easily, or that they're hearing no more often than not when they're first learning. Obviously, we've got other stuff that we need to do. You've got to bring home the kibble somehow. So you can't just be catering to their every whim, of course, all day, every day. But that's not typically how this goes. They might at first be really excited and motivated. And so try to say yes to those presses and follow through. Put some money in your relationship bank account by saying yes to those presses, building up the value for using the board. That way you can eventually have those boundaries set once they're ready for boundaries to be set. We'll talk about that on the next slide. But we want to start with 2 or 3 buttons, more than one, to help them understand that different buttons mean different things, and you can model them perhaps in contrast to each other. And our starting buttons ideally should be motivating and meaningful to your individual learner or learners, so you can pick and choose depending on if they're sharing a board, what's going to be motivating for different learners, or if they have their own, you can tailor it to whatever their interests are. My guys all share a big board, but I started with the cats elevated and separate so that they wouldn't have to come in and learn, 50 plus buttons on the dog's board. That would be a lot. So we started with just our own 3 hex tiles, 3 buttons, eat, play, and pets, and go from there. Katie says wet food and kibble. So Ren asked, I'm worried that a treat or snack button would get constant use. And as you are hearing, there is definitely some requesting happening from Katie. I'm going to show her that she already has some wet food and kibble, or at least I'm going to double check. Her brother might have eaten it, and that might be why. But notice that this is the first that she's requesting wet food and kibble while I'm teaching. Hey, cat, want wet food kibble? So I'm going to bring her wet food kibble mix over to the board. Oh yeah, she's excited. She's chowing down. Now, because of little Mr. Resource Guarder Ash right here, who would immediately kick her out of the way and go for it, I'm going to feed her in her station here, even though I brought the food to her. To reiterate, scoop. There we go, scoop. So even though I brought the food to her, you can then move it away. I like to bring things to the board when they're first learning to reiterate, this is where all the action happens. This is the valuable place to be. But especially for my visually impaired guys who, yeah, they're hearing me prep the food. Yeah, they're smelling to an extent, but to have it brought right to them. Yes, your wish is my command. And then escort her to her spot is very, very reinforcing for her. And this is about her dinner time. This is pretty typical. I have learned through her food presses that she prefers 5 or 6 small meals a day. Lots of cats prefer multiple small meals, but she likes them very small, very frequent, and she loves to have pumpkin as a meal topper. I never would have guessed, but she kept pressing her buttons insistently after I was putting pumpkin on the dog's food. Kept calling, I think, it wet food, and I was like, well, now we need a way to differentiate between your actual wet food and pumpkin. So she got a pumpkin button and will tell me, kibble, wet food, pumpkin, what all she wants mixed in. Wet food water is her freeze-dried food with water added to it. And so my point with all of this is that, yes, some of them are incredibly motivated to use those food buttons. Absolutely. But what we find is that when you're consistent about saying yes, if you can be consistent about saying yes to a food button, and you might not be able to be, if you've got resource guarders, if you've got dietary restrictions, if they're already on, a diet or need to specialize protein, something like that, it might not be realistic at this point to have a food button. We started with a general eat so that I could model it while I'm eating, while anybody in the household is eating. Ash, come here. Katie, your brother's at the bottom. Sorry. Trying to prevent collision. Katie, you want help? You got it? Here, mom scoop help. I know your brother's in the way. Mom scoop help. Yay, mom help. So there's an example of being able to model help in an unconventional way. Yay, mom help. Yeah, that way Ash didn't have to leave his little snooze spot or get jumped on. Good Katie cat. That was so good. Okay, apologies. So back to the food discussion. Once they realize that you're going to say yes consistently to their presses, it does become less valuable to majority of the learners. If you knew that you were going to win the slot machines every single time, or the jackpot every single time you played the slot machines, eventually, after you're a few million in, you'd be like, well, I need to meet my other needs. I've got to eat. I got to go to the bathroom, especially if you know that every time you go back to that slot machine, it's going to be available and you're going to win a jackpot. You're going to get what you want. That diminishes the value of that money of winning a jackpot significantly, right? So that's the idea that we're seeing with a lot of the food. The super motivated food learners out there, they tend to use their board to request food, even if you don't give them a food button. Notice how Bernie very effectively requested more food in his puzzle just with a more button. So not giving them a food button doesn't mean that they're not going to find ways to request it anyway. It just gives them an appropriate outlet, a way for you to reinforce the board and the buttons to say yes pretty easily, because it doesn't have to be just for meals. It can be for a training session. It can be a snack button. It can be just a little scatter that you do. But if your gut is telling you that it's going to be too much to handle, by all means, you don't have to start with a food button. And in fact, some people will start with 2 or 3 other buttons, and then if they're not getting progress after a few weeks, then they might pull that out as kind of as a jackpot button to really motivate them to want to use it. And I was so worried early on about starting with a food button for my border collie, because all of the advice that was given to us when we began 4.5 years ago was, don't start with the food button. The buttons actually came with literature explicitly saying, don't start with food buttons. And so I avoided it for my border collie. I began with ball instead and outside. Well, guess what she enjoys far more than food? Ball and outside. So it was incredibly motivating to use those other ones, far more motivating than food. And in fact, I added a food and puzzle button fairly soon after to help calm her down. So it really just depends on your learner, how they're going to interact, how they're going to be motivated there. And then we also have, as Robin mentioned, a mentorship call that is all about spamming as well. If you do find yourself getting more requests than you are able to keep up with. Hopefully that's helpful to think about, though. So again, our starting buttons, they press that. How are you going to reinforce that? How are you going to model it if that's what they're first learning? So think concrete, actionable, easy to understand, easy to take action on to begin. So in summary, 3 buttons or 2 if that's all you have, 3 hex tiles, go. And while you're deciding where the board will live, and again, ideally a central location, easy to model, easy for your learner to get to and to watch you from. They like to watch us a lot of times while they're pressing to see that we're getting up, that we're responding, that we're taking action on their requests. 3 buttons, 3 hex tiles, go. Have fun with it. You can always move the board around until you decide. And then, if you do have a learner who is pressing and perhaps pressing more than you're able to say yes to, that's a really great problem to have. We've got our mentorship calls that can help you survive that so-called spamming stage, but also it might mean that you're ready for some abstract concepts. And especially if you notice them pressing and then looking for a different outcome, expecting something different or leading you to something seemingly unrelated, they may be asking for another button. And thinking about, especially early on, still adding more buttons that are easy for you to say yes to. So maybe it's gotten hard to say yes to all their snack presses or eat presses. So maybe you add a puzzle button and then you can fill their puzzle and you can walk away, do something else for a little while. So think about more ways to say yes so they don't get frustrated. And then also thinking about some early abstract pairs. We want to add abstract concepts in pairs whenever possible to model them in contrast or opposition to each other. That way it can be a little easier for them to understand. Because when we think about something like more or yes or now, we can take action with those. Yes, more eat now as we're refilling their food. Outside now, yes, pets, whatever it is. That's a lot more actionable than all done or no or later. Outside, all done, you can go later. Nothing happens, right? So thinking about these in pairs, and as you're narrating, as you're modeling verbally to your learners, start paying attention to some things that might go together. So more and all done are a common pair. Yes and no, now and later, or now soon and later. Gets a bit more complicated, but down the line, things like today versus tomorrow. You can even do different identity things, names, your name versus their names. We have a really fun example that we often link, that Irma's great about linking, I should say, called the Tea Party, that Jennifer, one of our guides, coined, where you can work on like mom, eat, or whatever you want to call yourself your first name, dad, whatever it is. Narrate as you're eating, and then you can narrate as you're feeding the other learners, working on taking turns, working on names. Thank you, Irma. Yes, and then emotions too, even thinking about that. Safe versus concerned. Positive emotion button like happy in contrast to a negative like mad, sad, or frustrated, these sorts of things. And we have mentorship calls that go in more depth with this as well. And we have the great question in the chat too. Can you teach a deaf cat how to use the buttons? No problem. In fact, I found, at least I know it's different, but for my blind cat, in some ways we had the advantage of she was super cued into listening to me, listening to verbal cues. I could tell her, while we're out in the yard, when to stop, when to step up, step down, that sort of thing. So I suspect that you may see something similar with a deaf animal, particularly if you utilize the connect buttons that have the light up aspect to them. That can really help. And we've even had blind and deaf learners that have had success with the buttons as well. So just deaf, just blind feels not as much of a challenge in comparison. It's all about motivating them, being consistent with your outcomes. And you can always utilize some hand signals as well, or if you already have hand signals, press the button, pair that with your hand signal the way you would with your voice. So especially if they already are cued to hand signals, it's really no difference. Just work on your, I guess, physical modeling, your hand modeling instead of verbalizing. Great question. Keep us posted and we can always chat more about that too. And Calvin also added, thank you. I don't know why I didn't add this as well, that many use scent marking to help differentiate buttons, whether we're adding some natural scents to the buttons ourselves or our learners are doing it for us. Absolutely, there seems to be some pheromone marking scent sorts of things. My blind cat used to lick her paw when she was hungry and drooling, and put that specifically on the hungry button. And I made sure to use those same buttons. I don't know if any of the scent was left. It had been close to a year after she passed by the time I brought the buttons out for the kittens after they came home. But I do wonder, were they already somewhat scent marked to help them orient? The mom button lived in my pocket for the day before putting it onto the board. And if you ever look at our board, I've got textures on a lot of like furniture protectors to make it kind of kitty braille for my low vision learners, though I suspect they are primarily used as scent soakers to absorb and hold scent more so than texture for them to differentiate. The textured braille aspect tend to work a lot better for my fully blind cat. I think my two now have enough visual input, even little as it is for Katie, that they aren't as much the texture, so much as smell and movement based. Anyway, absolutely. I'm excited for you to dive in. All right. And target training. So you are modeling for your learner, whether that's verbally or using your hand signals and following through on things. You have chosen motivating buttons, but your learners just aren't yet pressing independently. That's okay. Target training can help them connect the dots and realize that they too can activate the buttons and that these are, again, fun, motivating. It's worth the trouble to press this and to have us then respond instead of just vocalizing at us or showing us via body language. So again, if they do that, we're still honoring it. We're still following through. We don't want the buttons to be a source of frustration. All right, so we've got several target training videos that Irma helpfully linked in the chat. Yes, Katie, hi. Where's Katie want? Where's Katie want? I just got a very insistent meow before walking over. Katie want play? I do have the play button in my hand. Katie want play? Did I take your button? So the first video linked is with Alexis, with Bunny. Play. And this one's best for larger learners. You want to play with Bernie and Ash? Where's Bernie? Bernie, come play. So with the Alexis and Bunny method, a shortcut to that, if you already have a high five cue, if you already have a nose touch from your dog or cat, or a shake paw cue, you can always pop the button right out of the hex tile, put it in the palm of your hand, cue them to give you that high five, and then follow through on what it is that you just pressed. Rapid modeling doesn't have to be with food. It can be with something like pets, play, whatever it is that motivates them. Neighbor, that was an oops while you play. The other piece, the next two, are with cats specifically, but are great for small learners as well. With these, they talk about getting the weight shift to press. A lot of our cats in particular and smaller learners want to bat at the sides. They want to tap instead of a full press on the button. So if that's the case with your learner, when in doubt, help them out. Again, we don't want this to be a source of frustration for them. We want them to want to engage. So if you see them staring it down, trying to nose at it, pawing it all, if you can time it to press the button, not their body in any way, but the button, so that they can feel it move, they can hear it if they are auditory, they can see it if they have that sense working as well. They've got that vibration of the speaker in the button, the movement, just all of this feedback, and then you can take action. That can help them connect the dots even faster. So again, if you can time it while they're trying to activate it, you go ahead and press and follow through. That will often go ahead and speed things up as well. When in doubt, help them out so that they are not frustrated. Hi, Katie. All right, hopefully that was helpful. And I see some more questions coming through. That our dog is very eager to use her buttons. We set them up yesterday and she's using all three correctly. Outside potty play already today. She was using a bell previously when wanting to go out, or wanting to get out and attention. Can we add more buttons already or should we wait? So we do want to be careful not to overwhelm them. But if you're seeing motivation, excitement, we don't want to do too much too fast too soon, but you'd probably be okay to add another one or two if you've got other things that are exciting that are, ready to go. Again, just watch that we don't overwhelm them. Keeping the buttons a little bit further apart at first too often works best for our learners. And especially though, if they already have an existing vocabulary, sometimes they do pick it up really quick. Yeah, great question. And if you do notice, that things slow down, if you add a few more buttons, just keep modeling. And worst case, you can always pull them, a little bit after that. But I think you'll be okay. Oh, and the next question that came through, I'm going to have Robin get all over in just a minute. Let me share some additional resources with you all, and then we'll dive further into your Q&A. Hi, Kate. Did you find Bernie? All right, so one of the best resources that we have for you all is just community.fluent.pet, where we are right now. Those of you who are watching from the FluentPet community, this has 4.5 years of people's experiences, research, so much great info. So we've got start button teaching. This tab is great if you're the type that wants to go in depth about everything. Kitty cat, that's for you right there. FAQs, same thing. If you're somebody who wants tons of detail, there's 41 different FAQs. If that's not you, no worries at all. We want to work with your learning style. We've got more boot camps. You are always welcome to attend a future boot camp. Send a household member if you'd like somebody else to be here that wasn't here yet today. You can flip to past and find recordings of previous boot camps. Today's will be up once we're done teaching. Puzzle. Hey, do you want puzzle? We can do puzzle soon, babe. Yes, puzzle soon. Mom, work more now. We'll see how much spamming I get after. We're still working on patience with the kittens, particularly Katie. So the next part that I'm really excited about are the mentorship calls. So not only do we have one of our mentors on the call this evening, but these are free ongoing chats that you can attend. They were just announced, so feel free to RSVP for this next month. Different topics, different instructors. Things like surviving that spamming stage if you need help setting the boundaries, picking first words if you want more in-depth info there, more target training, cats specifically. Yeah, lots of really great info there. Resources. This is where you can find the Learning Center that has the in-depth info, those paw targeting tutorials that Irma helpfully linked, a soundboard planning tool if you're a planner. If you want more examples of things, check all through here. And there are different mentors who have shared resources there too, if you want to get a preview of who's teaching. And then different discussion items, chat, you can share updates, wins, struggles, anything like that. One last thing I want to show you, show off your soundboard. If you have a layout that you would like to share, we'd love to see it. There are as many layouts as there are households out there. There's cool wall-mounted options. If you've got a nose presser, you've got the advantage of it being easier for them to press that way. You've got that space-saving design. Here's that soundboard planning tool in use here. There's different island style. That's kind of how ours is set up. Remember, I mentioned having the board in a central location is best, easy for you to model, easy for your learner to get to. What I love about Sasha's example right here is even though it's in a space-saving corner, kind of tucked out of the way a little bit, there's still enough room for her dogs to get behind the board to press. So they can orient and still watch Sasha. So thinking about things like that. And again, you can always move it around. And then there's that food modeling challenge if you want to see examples of it in action too. All right. And then we also have the Let's Get Them Pressing course. In addition to all the great free resources that I just shared, we've got our course that is taught by Diane of NeuroDog Training, and we have Alexis with Bunny as a guest instructor as well. There's live coaching as well as asynchronous class or material that you can be working through. I contributed some to the cat material, and there is 25% off if you are interested. I know we have Robin and Kelvin are both graduates of the course as well. It's so much fun. I love getting to attend whenever I can. And then if you are realizing that you are ready to expand your board or want more buttons, textiles, anything like that, this is a 15% off code that's good for the next 24 hours. It's good for everything at FluentPet, including the Connect system, which is less commonly discounted. So feel free to take advantage of that. And then if you have any feedback for us, we're always looking to improve. We've got a feedback link that will be added to the chat as well. Thank you so much, Irma. All right, y'all. So let's dive into your additional questions here. Thank you, Robin, for helping with the hardware question there. And yes, the links are all accessible afterwards. Remember, you'll have a recording. You can always go to past recordings if you wanted to check out any other boot camps, and you can check out previous mentorship call recordings too. If you wanted to see last month, I think we had April, or excuse me, I think we had them in March as well. So you can find plenty of previous mentorship calls. Audrey says, do you have any tips on encouraging a larger learner on being gentler with the buttons? Louise has been launching hers out of the board and across the room from how hard she's hitting them. So Adora, my border collie, is not that large of a learner, but she was also very rough on her board at first. I'm not sure without seeing Louise, but I know in Adora's case anyway, some of it was excitement, but sometimes it was also frustration, trying to either activate or just being like, why do I have to do this, Mom? Back when I was asking for presses more. Now I'm happy with whatever I get. So a few ways that we tackled this. I reduced pressure on Adora. She's very sensitive to space. So sometimes we've seen where our learners, if we're hovering over the board, they're going to hit a little bit more flingy or frantically depending. So sometimes giving space, taking a little bit of physical pressure off, having some buttons that are actually calmer or less exciting of buttons. So I mentioned with Adora, we started with ball and outside. super, super high value for her. We started with ball instead of play because ball is life. And yeah, she was very, very motivated to press. So that's where I added food puzzle as an option to calm her down. And generally speaking, we want to be adding buttons to the board that our learners will want to use, that they'll get use out of, that they'll get or be motivated to use. But for Adora, actually, fairly early on, I added a settle button so that when she was going ham on her buttons, I could just walk over and press settle and tell her, like, settle now, mom work, or, you know, if I was doing something else and couldn't respond. And that seemed to be helpful. And it got to the point where Adora would also narrate when she needed to settle, or if she was going to go take a nap, she'd press settle and then go lay down. So calmer buttons, buttons that can maybe be related to that, and then also practicing your target training, working on getting some nice controlled precision presses, whether with the paw or maybe practicing the nose too to see if that helps with some of the flinging. We practiced our target training to build confidence and to shape a gentler press that way. And the final piece of that was I Velcroed them into place. You may not need to do this step, but I just got some heavy duty hook and loop Velcroed them all into position. And that also helped extinguish the behavior. Hopefully, I know that was a long answer, but hopefully that helped. Grace asked, I'm wondering how the hex tiles help. I only have 2 hex tiles, but more buttons. Is there an organization to that? Yeah, so the idea with the hex tiles is just keeping them in place and giving it kind of a map with lots of different orientations. You can adjust it however you want. Some people do kind of a cockpit style. Yes, no, I know you want outside. Some do island style, which is kind of how ours is, with lots of small clusters. And I tried to make it so that each one of our hex tile islands looks different. So it's a different shape. There are different colors. And then within each individual hex tile, I also have a different pattern. But I'm also working with low vision learners, so I want things to be incredibly visually distinct for them. So we have our last kind of, I've got 2 others, but they're taped to the floor. These ones are sitting on top of a yoga mat, so they're easy to move. So we've got kind of our last massive island piece here. And for me, this is getting ready to be filled in with body parts, but we're not there yet. So I like to add a hex tile first and then fill it in just to kind of ease them into board changes. Anytime I'm making board changes, I want my learners to have the option of being present. They don't have to stay around if they don't want to, but I don't want them waking up from a nap or coming in from outside and being like, whoa, everything is different. Particularly my, ones that are, visually impaired or something like that. I don't want them to be that thrown off. So I like them to have the option of being present while I'm doing work. Yes. Hi, Kate. Yes. 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 Katie want play. And I think she is just laying on a button for my attention. So that's where if you have somebody who does that, at least in my cat's case, that's when I can just take a toy. Yes, play. And kind of throw a distraction and see if that gets her to move. Sometimes I'll press scoop and pick her up if it's just an attention behavior or connection seeking behavior that I'm getting from them. And using the buttons to seek out attention, connection is absolutely a valid use. So many of us over the years have been like, well, they're only using it because they want my attention. That's totally valid communication. That's so much of how we use language to request things of each other, to just say hi or get connection, communication. So that is absolutely valid. Yeah, and so Grace, it's totally up to you if you want a color to mean something, if you want to group it in a certain way. For my blind cat, I just added buttons sequentially. I wasn't about to move them around into new groups for her because that would have thrown her off a lot. Now I make little changes here and there. We're on version 4, probably 5 now of our board since moving last August. Yes, hi. Some people do monochromatic boards. Some people do beautiful rainbow boards. Again, for me, I'm looking for visual contrast since that's what I'm trying to prioritize for my learners to navigate. And Charlie, great question. Thank you, Calvin, for answering there. Oh no, I see. Yep, Calvin's all over it. Thank you. Oh, nice. And Robin, thank you for adding that as well. Robin said, sometimes when Bert hasn't had enough enrichment, he goes ham and either needs a walk or a forced nap. Yeah. Sometimes it's not even what they're pressing, but how they're pressing, where just behavior or even not pressing. Behavior is information. And if you've got a learner who's chewing on the buttons all the time, scratching at the board, consider adding a scratch button. Consider adding a chew button or something like that if they're going to pick up a button or a hex tile, and redirect them to something that's more appropriate. So Katie, you're pressing wet food, but I'm pretty sure that you actually want just attention. Let's do a scoop. Come here. Hi. Pets and scoop. All right, I'm going to show you. You've got wet food right here, but I think you just want attention. Yeah, you have your wet food. Never mind that she can get up there herself. All right, any additional questions while we're together, y'all? I so appreciate all of these fantastic ones. And remember, this is not your only opportunity to get help. We have more boot camps. We've got our wonderful mentorship call series. So many guides, and guides are folks who have had success with their learners with buttons and want to just share that. And once you have success with your learners, you are eligible to become a guide as well. So you may be more in touch with Calvin going forward if that's the case too. It's just such a wonderful community of people who care about the well-being of our animals and how we can live intentionally with them in ways that they can, be living truly their best lives. Yeah, so thank you, everyone, for being here. I'll hang out in case there's a couple questions that are lingering or anything. But I wanted to just thank you for being here. Thank you, Calvin. Thank you, Irma. Thank you, Robin, for all of your contributions, for being here. And all of you for trying something new and experimenting. Please don't be strangers. And I'm always tempted to say good luck, but you don't need luck. You know your learners in your household best. You've got this, and we're here to be your guides as well.